Hello, everyone. We'll let folks take a minute to get situated, get their audio working correctly. All the fun aspects of our virtual daily lives. I'm going to wait just a couple more seconds to see if the attendees number keeps popping up as another tranche comes in. And then we can get going. All right. Thank you for attending today's Hepatitis B United webinar on taking care of your liver after a hepatitis B diagnosis. My name is Frank Hood. I'm the director of Hepatitis B United, and the coalition is chaired by both Hepatitis B Foundation and APCHO. I am pleased today to be joined by Wendy Lowe, who's one of our Just B storytellers, as well as Dr. Jennifer Lai, to talk about an extremely important topic, which is taking care of your liver after a hepatitis B diagnosis. And so within this webinar, let me get my slides moving. So in order to participate in this webinar, you've joined with your attendees on mute, although you do have a chat function. We hope that you drop your name in there, say hi to your fellow folks and to the panelists, and to also drop in questions. There's a Q&A window that you can use to get in questions that we'll make sure are answered at the very end. And there will be some other interactive portions of this. So when that time comes, we'll walk you through those steps. Additionally, this session is being recorded, and we will share what slides we are able to share afterwards. We'll make sure to send an email out to attendees. So a little bit about Hepatitis B United. We are a national coalition consisting of other coalitions. We have 50 plus local coalitions and national organizations across 29 cities and 23 states plus Washington, D.C. And we're really dedicated to reducing the health disparities that are associated with hepatitis B. And we focus on the policy and implementation and systems that impact awareness, prevention, screening, linkage to care and vaccination, as well as just really tackling the social determinants of health and other health equity issues that impact the communities that are impacted by hepatitis B. And with that, so when we talk about health disparities within hepatitis B, liver cancer is an area where we see a lot of disparity as well. And that's really what we're going to talk today about with our panelists in some ways, or not liver cancer specifically, but why it's important to take care of your liver after hepatitis B diagnosis. Let me pull a note up real quick. So this month, October, is Liver Cancer Awareness Month, and it is certainly a cancer that needs to be had awareness raised for it due to it being one of the few cancers that are been increasing lately. So it's expected that in 2022 that there will be more than 41,000 new liver cancer diagnoses, and that approximately more than 30,000 individuals will die from liver cancer. In the last 40 years, liver cancer incidents have tripled, and death rates have more than doubled over that time. And really, chronic hepatitis B and hepatitis C cause about 80% of all the liver cancers. And so, when we're thinking about individuals chronically infected with hepatitis B, they're more likely to develop liver cancer. And so it's important to take care of your liver in these instances. And I'm pulling up my other note real quick. Additionally, this is especially concerning when you look at, you see the communities that are being impacted by hepatitis B, such as the API community and the NHPI community. as well as African immigrants, and then look at liver cancer rates and inequities in those communities. And we see that among API men, liver cancer is the second most common cause of cancer death. It is the fourth most common cause of cancer death among Alaska Native and African immigrants and Hispanic males. So really taking care of your liver after a hepatitis B diagnosis is supremely important, and it's also supremely important that we raise awareness about liver cancer, and that's what October is about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our experts on the liver, or just really health and wellness, and we're going to start off with Wendy Lowe. Wendy Lowe is one of our Just B storytellers. She became one this year. As a new patient advocate, she participates in local, national, and global initiatives to support elimination. I just kicked my chair down. Whoops. Support the elimination of hepatitis B. She is a health speaker who incorporates healthy eating, intentional lifestyle choices, and attention to wellness as a way to manage living with hepatitis B. Outside of working in various roles in the high-tech software industry for 20 plus years, Wendy is also a mindfulness meditation practitioner and a certified health coach in functional medicine. She has developed and delivered health education workshops tailored for different populations such as teens, adults, and the Chinese-speaking community. And I am thrilled to have seen Wendy speak at just this last World Hepatitis Day event, and is a very compelling speaker. So Wendy, I'm looking forward to this, and I will have you share your screen.
Thank you. All right, can you see my screen okay?
It looks good.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to just thank everyone for being here today. And I'm just delighted to have this opportunity to share. So I'll jump right in. What I'd like to do is offer some broad strokes as far as providing some practical, actionable guidelines, approaches, and just almost taking some certain perspective in terms of taking care of our liver. And I speak with this from as an individual, right? A patient living with Hep B, and also as a health coach in functional medicine. And for those of you who might not have heard of functional medicine, it's actually a model that provides patient-centered, individualized approach to address illnesses and try to get to the underlying root cause. And so it's taking a holistic approach toward optimal health. Okay. And then the other part of a disclosure, this is really an awareness and education session. I'm not here to share any medical or nutritional advice. Okay. So let me share a little bit about my story just to anchor and provide context for the conversation. As Frank had mentioned, right, I became a Just B storyteller this summer. And just in some few things here, and you can watch that Just B video in the future. But I was diagnosed in my 20s, and during that time, I didn't have any physical visible symptoms. So I pretty much kind of ignored it, even though it was in the back of my mind the whole time. In my 30s, I had to be put on antiviral medication, and I've been on that ever since. And when I was put on medication, that was really a big wake-up call for me. And I became much more attuned and embarked at this health seeker journey. I got into, as mentioned, nutrition, studying nutrition, health and fitness, mindfulness, meditation, and then most recently, a health coach. So what I'm trying to say here is having Hep B, getting diagnosed and having to live with it has kind of put me on this trajectory to really try to find out what is, how to live with it, right? And how to be well, even though there's no cure yet, okay? And in the, as part of that journey, a big part of it, we deal with certain major situations or things that come up, the diagnoses, certain things that as the disease progresses, right, having to contend with that. And then there's life situations, right? In my 20s, it's about dating, it's about, going out, socializing, there's alcohol, or starting a family. So various things will come in. And I think having certain perspective of how to meet these things as they come up. And so in my video, I title it, How Can I Be Okay? So I'm going to plant this question here. And at the end, we'll come back to this question. So in terms of taking care of the liver, I like to actually borrow the American Liver Foundation logo, which they recently branded, to define what we mean by, or what I like to see as far as the liver. One, obviously the liver is an organ, right? It's our internal organ, and hepatitis B is inflammation of that. And so we do need to tend to that and seek care. What I'd like to do is really widen the conversation and saying, well, it's more than just the organ, it's about the person that's living with Hep B. And when we do that, it really pushes it from a patient, person-centered way of looking at things. And we all know, I think there's statistics, 50% of adults have more than one health chronic condition. So it's important to look at the person as a whole, in addition to just, in addition to looking at things that we need to care for the liver. Okay. And then the third aspect here is the word live, right? At the end of the day, it's all about being alive and living life fully and being able to meet things that come, right? So I like to take this talk today about taking care of the liver in terms of using that holistic approach, incorporating all three aspects, okay? And that's what we speak of wellness. So here's a question. For someone living with Hep B, we do need to follow it generally, every 6 months with checkups and labs and stuff. Those are incidents. But if most of our life is spent outside of this visit, what are we doing between these visits? So that's the question that I like for us to look into. Okay. So at this moment, I thought we could share this clip here, and I'm going to ask Shreya to help me. Okay. All right, I'll be the blue guy. Why am I always so tired?
Not enough sleep, poor diet, dehydration, not enough exercise.
If only there was something I could do about it.
Maybe go to bed earlier, eat healthier, go for a walk.
But there isn't.
Okay.
So I unfortunately cannot see you, all of you. Otherwise, I would ask you by a show of hands, how many of you can relate to it? Maybe you can post to chat if you can relate to what you just to this video here. Okay, all right, I see some thumbs up, great. Yeah, so, all of us can relate to this in some regard because we've all been there, right? And I think there's an important part to this comic strip is saying is, by and large, we kind of heard at some point, right, whether it's a doctor visit or going to other webinars or our own finding of information, and then information from friends and colleagues about what to do. Like, how do we take care of ourselves? So the what, recently, the Hepatitis B on Facebook posted this thing, right? It's a primer in terms of how to maintain your health, and you can see the list. Eat healthy, maintain a healthy weight, steer clear of toxins, don't drink alcohol, work out regularly, consume medications responsibly, and don't smoke, right? And I like that the line there is that you all know a lot of this already. So if we know this already and it's not new, what's missing? Why is it that we still resonate with that little comic strip, the little blue creature there? Okay. Well, a big part of what's missing is we have these intentions and desires, these goals on the left here, but we need to find a way to translate them into action, into behavior change, right? Just saying eat healthy, that doesn't translate into what I put into my mouth, into my body as healthy. So there's a question of how do we motivate ourselves? How do we get ourselves to initiate and be able to sustain these change? So what we're talking about is bridging this gap between intention to action. And that's what I like to do, is to offer a couple of practical approaches in terms of how to translate that, right, to make it happen. So as I'm going to invite you to take one of these items on the list, right, 1 to 7, or maybe you have something that you know what, I need to do this as a goal, right? What we're going to do is break it down into smaller, manageable activities or units that you can do something about it. Because eat healthy, that's a desire, a goal, but that doesn't translate into action. Okay, so have that in mind. And the first thing is think about, I have the sign stop, right? What are things related to this goal that is not serving you, right? You know that it might be a barrier or it's no longer useful anymore. Think about what is something that related to this goal that you can eliminate, or perhaps reduce in frequency and quantity. Or maybe it requires tapering off. It's too much to stop so abruptly, right? Like cessation of smoking. Maybe there's a tapering. So think about that. Now, if you were in person here, what I would ask is you put it on a sticky, right? And then we would all post it on a sticky. But you can do that exercise mentally. And I'm going to share an example of my own after this. Then think about, for this goal, what would be something that you know is good for you, that you would like to try, that you'd like to initiate, to start. And with this try, sometimes it might be something you've tried before, but you feel like, you know what, I could try this again, right? The other part is to really think about small size, bite size. So if I wanted to incorporate more moving regularly, I might just say, you know what, during lunch break, I'm going to take a walk around the block, right? That would be something that is very doable, okay? And then the third column here is continue. Take a moment and recognize, what are some things I'm already doing today, right? That is in the service of this goal. So it's important to acknowledge and recognize that, because we have a self-critic in ourselves, feeling like we're not doing enough or not good enough, but there could be a lot of things we're already doing. And so acknowledging and continuing and sustaining that is going to motivate us to get to this goal. Okay. So let me share a personal example. When I see my general doctor or the hepatologist, right? Don't drink alcohol, drink very little. But the fact of the matter is, it's actually quite hard to do. We live in a society where drinking, it's a social activity, right? Whether it's at corporate functions, having family dinner at a restaurant, meeting with friends. So for me in my 20s and my 30s, it was a huge challenge. And so I thought I'd bring this example. Now, the things that I came up with for this is personal to me, but I thought, for someone, your situation is going to be tailored, it's going to be individualized. Okay. So for me, one of the things that I did, to try to reach toward this goal is to not have alcohol in the house. What that means is we don't buy it. And if somebody, brought it, this is our little secret. We just recycle, right? Bring it to another event. When we move to another house, one of the things is we had these wine glasses that was in the original Crate and Barrel box. We kept it in there. So they're still in the garage. So it's just doing things that will be eliminating, right, opportunities, okay, to have alcohol. The other thing that when I went to restaurants, especially with friends and coworkers, or especially with, when we go out with my husband, one thing I started to do was when they come, I ask them to take my wine glass away. And then I started this thing of 2 sips per taste. So my husband will have his bottle and I allow myself to taste the wine, right? And then naturally some of my friends will ask, oh, why don't you have a glass? I'm like, no, I'm the designated driver. So this was an important thing because there's a sense of social pressure, right? And so coming up with this excuse as I am, but the designated driver allow me to be okay and be with the event. And as a lot of you know, having hepatitis B, there's stigma around it. I've never shared that I have hepatitis B until I share my story publicly this year. So this is a way of kind of navigating life situations, okay? And then my last item here is I gave myself permission to have a fruity drink. My go-to is half cranberry, half orange juice. And during the dinner or the setting, I give myself permission to have as many of those as I want. So this is a way of kind of working with, right, what we have. And it's a work in progress. You have to experiment and you can get creative. And what I found is that my relationship to alcohol evolved over time. And like now, I don't really feel like I'm deprived of it in any way, right? So again, things are going to be different for each of us. But I thought I want to share personal examples so that you have ideas. Now, something else to take note from this, right? We went from don't drink alcohol, this broad thing, to all of these things that you see in the post-it. These are very specific and they're very actionable, okay? And so this gets into this acronym called Get Smart, right? Some of you might be already familiar with SMART goals, where it's specific, measurable, attainable or reachable, right? It's relevant or realistic, and then time-bound. There's a start and end, okay? So if we say, I'm gonna work out regularly, that's non-specific. You can't really measure and know if it happened. A different way of saying it would be, I'm gonna work out 30 minutes of cardio, 5 times a week for the next 2 weeks, right? So that would be an example of a SMART goal. And I'll just share another example that I have. I use low-tech way of tracking things. So this is a little sheet that I put for myself of different goals that I apply. Getting in bedtime by 10 o'clock, right? Making sure I can sleep 7 hours. And if I did it, I do a check mark. If I didn't, you see a little note there. So it's just my way of reporting, documenting what's happened. A comment about this is not a report card. It's not about judgment. Oh, I didn't do this, and then there's a story that go with it. But it's just documented. Did it happen? Did it not? And the idea is that when we start to track it and measure it, there's a bit of priming of our intention to behavior. If I didn't do it for the past 3 days, maybe by the 4th day or by the 2nd week, I actually start doing this, okay? And then if something I couldn't do, maybe I'm not ready for it right now. So some tips for this is, be gentle, be kind to yourself. Start small, maybe with 1 or 2 habits that you want to establish, right? And then also use a tool that works for you. There are different strokes for different folks. I'm low tech, but I have a Fitbit. Some people might use other gadgets. Whatever that would be supportive for you and doesn't get in the way, okay? And then be willing to be flexible and experiment. Okay. I want to put a little plug here. We know October is Liver Cancer Awareness Month, but October 10th was also Global Mental Health Day. For people living with hepatitis B, there's a stigma for Hep B, but there's also a stigma around mental health. And when you're living with Hep B, there's going to be situations, right? Like I said, diagnosis, a chronic condition, various life stages where there's a mental and emotional burden in terms of living with Hep B. And this is another aspect of why we need to include, liver as holistically, right? All the different dimensions. We're not just talking about physical or visible symptoms. A lot of the things that are mental or social or certain things those are invisible and very seldom spoken because of the stigma around it. I can share, for me, a big part of the mental burden was the fear of dying prematurely. I have 2 kids. I worry whether I'm going to see them grow up. And in a few years ago, I have a loved one that passed away from liver cancer. And right around that time, I was diagnosed that I have liver damage. So, and then my husband lost his job. There was a lot of things that was happening. And it's, so that's why I'm trying to say it's not just Hep B, it's all the things that kind of come around it, surrounding it. And so it's really important for us to tune in, right? Like right now, what's going to serve me? What's useful during this point in my life, whether it's today or in this moment? So during that time when things got very overwhelming, I had to seek professional help, and I'm glad I did. Even with the tools that I know as a health coach and things like that, right? We all, sometimes when we bump against challenges, it can become overwhelming, okay? So I just want to bring up the invisible and the less spoken part of living with Hep B. And then the last thing I want to share with you is really this perspective taking. And here I want to share this, some of you might have seen it, but maybe first time, the idea of sphere of control, sphere of influence. So starting with sphere of control, right? These are things we have control over. We're the main agent here. Food, nutrition, movement and exercise, sleep, following the doctor's orders, compliance. And then I would put in here what we're talking about here, mindset and attitude. How we think, that's going to set a trajectory in terms of what we do. So again, is that intention to action. Then spheres of influence is things that we don't have total control, but we can influence, make some adaptation. So this could be relationships, right? It could be at work. It could be our environment, right? Where we choose to live, who we choose to interact with. And then also our stress, how we manage our stress. Then everything else, there's things that are outside of our control, right? That, COVID pandemic is an example, getting diagnosed with Hep B. Right now, waiting for this cure, right? So here's where I've kind of come into relation to these spheres of circles here. For spheres of control, focus on that, put in my best effort, because that's going to have the biggest bang for the buck. The influence part is adapt, right? Be flexible. I'm still going to do something about it, but the outcome, I can't control the outcome. And then the other part, everything else, I think it's very important to acknowledge, okay, this is here, this is how it is. Can I practice letting go? Can I practice not resisting, right? Like for a time, I was like resisting that, oh, I can't have this. But that is just energy that's kind of expended, and it creates that mental burden. Okay, I know this is not easy, but I'm just saying it has served as a useful framework for me. When a new thing comes up, it gets dropped in, I say, okay, is it under my control? Is it influence? Or is it things that are outside, right? And it helps to help provide discernment here. And I would say that when I start looking at the things that are within my control and my spheres of influence, I really feel a strong sense of agency, right? And there are choices and there are possibilities. And so with that, there's hope. And when I can be in relationship to Hep B in this way, there's a sense of healing. There's a sense of like, okay, I can be with this. I'm okay with this, right? And so I end where I started, right? In my video, I asked the question, how can I be okay? And in the video, there's one part that really kind of puts it in a nutshell. No one would choose to have hepatitis B. But since I do, how can I respond most fully to what is here, right? And so it's using these tools and knowing this sphere of control and influence this is the place where I have a lot of agency, and it's very spacious. It feels very like the realm of possibilities for me to do things, and I can have peace. And so that would be my last comment here. I'm going to take a pause here, just share quite a bit, right? And I'd like you to just see what resonates with you and how does this land. Okay. And my last item here, as a health coach, what I'd like to invite you to do is, given what you've heard today, I've shared, right? What's one actionable thing that you would like to do within a week? Go ahead and post it to chat. Okay. And that's what I have for today. Okay.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I was getting my answer into the chat. Very, very, excuse me, very powerful message. Oof. With that, we're actually going to move into talking about some of the items that Wendy made clear she wasn't going to discuss, which was nutrition. And so for that, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Jennifer Lai, who is a general transplant hepatologist at the University of California, San Francisco, and holds the endowed professorship of liver health and transplantation. Her mission is to improve the lives of patients with end-stage liver disease, both at an individual level through patient-centered care, as well as at a system-wide level through clinical investigation and dissemination of her really impactful research. And that research lies at the intersection of hepatology, liver transplantation, and geriatrics, and really looks at focusing on the application of aging research to the care of liver transplant patients across their lifelong journey, from diagnosis to liver disease through liver transplantation. So I think really, talks the talk on patient-centered care and also walks the walk. She's a principal investigator on a NIH-funded study and directs her university's advanced research and clinical hepatology program. I'll also say she is, I don't know if any of you have seen the liver meetings, or AASLD's, the liver folks journal, but it's like this really big, thick one. And she is currently an associate editor for that hepatology. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, or sorry, Dr. Lai.
It's fine, you can call me Jen. It seems like my screen sharing is paused. Do you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, great. So is my screen sharing is paused. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's really great to be able to interact with all of you. I wish in person, but next time in person. And Wendy, that was an unbelievable introduction. Great. Thank you for sharing your story. It was just a really, really beautiful message. So it's a tough act to follow, but actually, I think our talks are quite complementary. So I'm here to speak about taking care of your liver after a hepatitis B diagnosis. And I recognize that probably those of you who are living with hepatitis B in the audience probably have interacted with a provider who've told you, who've given you a checklist of what should you do. Screen for liver cancer with a liver ultrasound and serum alpha-fetoprotein every 6 months. And that is if you meet criteria for liver cancer screening. Do your blood tests as directed. Now, this depends on your provider, but usually at least every 6 to 12 months. And sometimes if you're in a more active phase, maybe more frequently, certainly check in with your doctor about the timing of your blood draws. And then if you have been recommended to take an antiviral, take it every day as prescribed. Now, I know, though, that those of you who are here attending this know this information and actually are looking for that next step. What else can I do to take control? Just as Wendy said, what's within my sphere of control? And actually, there's so much more that you can do for your liver than just following these 3 steps. Your liver is so precious. You may think that there's only one treatment. There's only one antiviral to control the hepatitis B and to help your liver. But in fact, that's not true. There is a treatment and a therapeutic that we can all use, and that is good nutrition. Good nutrition is a therapeutic, and it's just something that in medicine and as an MD, I have not been trained to really emphasize this to my patients well enough. And so that's actually why I've taken the extra step to get certified as a nutrition coach and to get additional board certification in nutrition, because I really feel like this is the linchpin to helping my patients as a hepatologist, to helping my patients living with chronic hepatitis B and other chronic liver diseases to really care for this beautiful, precious organ of the liver. Now, before we get into specific recommendations for what counts as good nutrition, I want you to know that everybody has different recommendations about nutrition. There's a lot of literature out there, and it really depends on what frame of mind and what philosophy you're coming from. So I want to just tell you what my philosophy is. We don't eat nutrients. I'm not going to tell you specifically this much vitamin A, this much vitamin D. We eat food, and that's how we relate to food. We don't eat food as specific vitamins and minerals. And ultimately, really echoing what Wendy was talking about in terms of sort of the behavioral changes and the way we can think about our behavior, the best diet ultimately is the one that you will stick to, that adheres to general principles of healthier eating. Not healthy, it's not a dichotomous black or white, it's just healthier. Can we get one step better than we did before? So with that in mind, my objective is to empower individuals living with chronic hepatitis B with liver-focused pragmatic strategies to eating well. So eating food just generally that are informed by the scientific evidence available to date. As Frank mentioned, I am a funded investigator. So really when I make recommendations, I really try to do it in a way that is informed by science. Now, before we get into nutrition, I want to just do a little bit of liver fibrosis 101, because it really guides the nutritional strategies. Now, let's talk about stages of liver injury. Chronic hepatitis B is a virus that attacks the liver, and you can live with chronic hepatitis B for a very long time before the liver gets damaged. But what happens is that over time, chronic hepatitis B, the virus, attacks the liver cells, embeds in the liver cells, and causes liver inflammation. And it's that process of inflammation that leads to fibrosis or scarring, that ultimately, when there's a lot of scarring, that can lead to cirrhosis and a lot of other complications that come with having cirrhosis. Along this pathway, up until the liver has this really amazing capacity to preserve its liver function, make all the proteins it needs, clear out the toxins that you ingest, up until, all the way through this early chronic hepatitis B, fibrosis, and even pretty advanced scarring, up until the time that one gets cirrhosis. And at which point, once you have cirrhosis, then your liver function becomes impaired. Now, it's this principle of whether the liver function is preserved or impaired that really guides the nutritional strategy. Early on, or not even early on, for the majority of the time with hepatitis B, actually the nutritional strategy is what can we do, what's within our sphere of control to protect the liver, to reduce the amount of damage that the liver suffers from. And then after the liver has become impaired, then it's about supporting the needs. What can we do to support our liver, support our body, because the liver can't do it as well. Today, in the interest of time, I'm only going to be able to focus on the protect your liver strategies. And I hope that, I can come back another time to really focus on the cirrhosis portion. But again, I'm only going to be focusing on nutritional strategies for individuals with earlier stage fibrosis. So let's start with, so let's talk about what are the nutritional strategies to protect your liver, again, for individuals with hepatitis B, but without cirrhosis. So I could not say it any better or simpler than how Michael Pollan said it, the very famous food writer and food philosopher, when he said, "Eat food, not too much, and mostly plants." This sums up the strategy to protecting that gorgeous organ better than any other phrase and any other talk that I could give. So if you remember only one thing, just put this up on your post-it: eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. Now, what kind of food should you be eating? Well, there are lots of types of foods, but I want to, in the interest of getting very, very pragmatic, and as Wendy suggested, let's do these really tiny incremental changes. I'm going to try to give you 2 specific recommendations about foods. The first one is coffee. And I put a picture of coffee with a heart in it because, believe it or not, black coffee is really, really good for your liver. It's this beautiful antioxidant. The precise mechanism of why black caffeinated coffee provides benefit is not entirely clear, but at this point, over the last 10 to 15 years, there are huge amounts of population-based observational data that suggest that caffeinated black coffee is protective. Now, look at this picture, and please be mindful that I did not post this picture. I did not post a well, I don't think decaf has a strong effect, strong as an effect based on the literature. And tea may have some benefit, caffeinated tea. It's not as strong as black coffee. So tea is better than this sort of sugary coffee option, but it's actually just this beautiful cup of black coffee that provides the antioxidant effects in patients with a chronic liver condition, including hepatitis B, hepatitis C, other chronic conditions. It actually does protect against scarring. So this is a great option. And how much coffee? Well, actually, the more coffee, the better. I've seen studies that have supported up to 6 cups a day, but I would say on average, it's about 3 to 4 cups of black coffee a day. Okay, now, the second food is actually one that I recommend that you reduce, and that is sugary drinks. These sugary sodas, the fruit juices, the smoothies, I would really recommend drinking in great moderation. I actually liked the way that Wendy used it as a substitute for alcohol. Certainly a lemonade is better than alcohol if you're living with chronic hepatitis B, but she also put it in the context of a really special occasion. You know, she's out with friends, she's socializing, and it's a really thoughtful use of a sugary drink. But I would really recommend trying to reduce this, and reduce this on a day-to-day basis. The data clearly show that added sugar drinks increase the amount of fat just everywhere, including in the liver. You can see that individuals in this study who drank regular soda as compared to milk, diet soda, and water had significantly higher levels of fat, independent of their own weight and their own body mass index. They had higher amounts of visceral fat, so that's the amount of abdominal fat that's been strongly associated with heart disease as well as fatty liver disease, and then also muscle fat. So this would really impair muscle function and the ability for you to get around day to day. So as much as you can, try to reduce the amount of sugary sweetened beverages that you drink. Let's go on to the second principle of Michael Pollan's phrase, which is eat until you are 70% full. I think in the Western society, we've really gotten to this place where you want to kind of, be unbuttoning your jeans and sitting back and saying, oh, I'm so full. But on a day-to-day basis, I would really recommend trying to get to a different marker for the end of the meal. And that is not so that your belly is stuffed, but that you are satiated. And one strategy to do that is to use the handle on serving sizes. So the palm guide to the serving size, or the hand guide to serving sizes, uses your hand. Now, everybody's hand is a different size, but for the most part, your hand is proportional to the portions that you should be eating. So bigger people probably need bigger portions, and your hand is generally bigger. Not that much bigger, because we generally don't need that much more food if you're that much bigger. And when it comes to your palm, this is a great way to measure about a 3-ounce portion of meat or fish. When it comes to some of the condiments like peanut butter or cream cheese or salad dressing, just your first half of your thumb is a great way to measure out 1 serving. When it comes to butters or oils, when you're cooking a stir fry, you have the tip of your index finger is a great way to measure out 1 portion. When it comes to vegetables, the grains that you eat, such as rice or serving of fruit, go ahead and go with sort of a fistful. This is a good size of 1 size. So if you're a cereal eater in the morning, about this much is 1 serving. And then if you are eating, pretzels or pita chips or nuts, go ahead and just sort of cup your hand like this. And that would be a good portion. That's an approximate portion. Now, of course, if you are a quantifier, if you love to measure, by all means, take out your scale, take out your measuring cup, take out your tablespoons. That would definitely be better. But in terms of realistically, I'm not the type of person who actually will do that on a day-to-day basis. And so this is a great serving. If I'm hungry, I need a snack, I want, some cut up fruit or some pretzels, I'll just take a handful and I'll say, okay, that's my portion for the day. So it's been very clear that patients who eat more calories a day are more likely to have fatty liver disease. That's NAFLD is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And in fact, the number of calories that a patient with fatty liver disease versus people without fatty liver disease is much, much higher. It's on the order of a couple hundred extra calories a day. So that really can be mitigated by using this palm portion. I think that usually we're used to much larger portions of snacks or much larger portions of pasta and rice. And I think that guiding your portions with this palm guide is a pretty important way, a pretty important strategy to reduce your portions. Another strategy for eating less is really on this picture right here to start. Drink a glass of water before your meal or when you get hungry. So before your meal, to try to fill up your stomach, give it a kind of start that sense of satiation. It takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to be really full before it sends the signal to your brain. So if you're already drinking a glass of water before you sit down to the meal, you're already starting that clock. And that might mean that you have just a little bit less time before your brain senses that you're full. Use a smaller plate or bowl so that when you put your portions on there, it really looks very full. I went to the Salvation Army, actually, the thrift store, and I bought these really beautiful gold-plated dishes that I use for my snacks. I love an afternoon snack, but I realized that snack portion was getting very big. And so if you just put it in it's a really small portion, but it's a really beautiful bowl that makes me very happy. And so that's a good way to treat yourself, to feel like you're treating yourself, but with a small portion. Definitely portion out all your snacks. Don't open the bag and just eat straight from the bag. Definitely pour it into a bowl. And then fruit is a great strategy to satisfy that sweet craving. The next strategy for eating is the Mediterranean style diet. Now, I really emphasize the style because I think when people say Mediterranean diet, I'm sure you've heard a lot of the news about the importance or the benefits of the Mediterranean diet. I think people automatically go to, oh, that means olives and olive oil and hummus and falafel. And, not all of us eat that all the time, some on occasion, but certainly as a Chinese woman, I'm not accustomed to eating that all the time. And a lot of individuals, given that it is an epidemic in Asian countries, are not accustomed to the Mediterranean diet. But the Mediterranean diet, when we say that, we actually mean a Mediterranean style diet. What does that mean? It's very plant forward. It's rich in vegetables, fruits, and dietary fiber, natural dietary fiber. 30 to 40% of calories are coming from fats. Yes, you heard me correct. 30 to 40% of calories are coming from fats. This is not a low-fat diet. I think that people think that when we are talking about trying to prevent fatty liver disease in the setting of hepatitis B, because fatty liver disease is actually one of the biggest cofactors for hepatitis B progression, patients think, oh, I should eat a low-fat diet that will protect my liver. And actually the data are pretty clear that the amount of fat that you eat is not necessarily correlated with the amount of fat that that's in your liver. Actually, it's sugar. Sugar leads to fat deposition in the liver. And so 30 to 40% of calories coming from fats is actually considered a high fat diet. And the reason for that is it's much more satisfying. So you end up ultimately eating fewer calories if you're more satisfied. The kind of fats, however, very important. We're talking about monounsaturated fatty acids, MUFAs, much more than the saturated fatty acids. These are the healthy fats. They're omega-3 fatty acids. They tend to be liquid at room temperature. The best oil to use would be olive oil. And this diet has been shown to actually reduce liver fat. And again, I emphasize fat in the liver because you can already control the hepatitis B with antivirals. But what we're trying to do is actually reduce any other toxin that affects your liver, and fatty liver is the most common other toxin that I see in my patients with hepatitis B. Let's get down a little bit more to the specifics of the Mediterranean style diet. Here's the triangle to think about. At the bottom here, we are talking about on a daily basis in the green, we're talking about whole grains. This is the rice, the pasta. So you can have fat, definitely. Fruits and nuts. Olive oil is the best, but if you really don't like the taste of olive oil, you can go to maybe a canola oil, although olive oil is preferable over canola, just given the antioxidants or the free radicals that are produced actually when canola oil is cooked versus olive oil. And then some servings of milk, cheese, and yogurt, those are okay. On a weekly basis, we're talking about fish and seafood 2 to 4 times a week, poultry and eggs 2 to 4 times a week, and sweets just 1 to 2 times a week. Replace that with fruit, and meat very infrequently, or other meat. I know poultry's in there, but the cattle much less frequently. I would even probably put the chicken up in the less frequently range and try to replace that with dairy or fish, which would be preferable. Here's what your plate should look like. It really should start with this bed of vegetables, and then the portion of the whole grains, if possible, or the rice and the pasta, and then your nuts, your protein, your beans, your lentils, your fish, your tofu going on this top area. So what are some tips for implementing this Mediterranean diet? Again, focusing on this idea that a lot of individuals with chronic hepatitis B are of Asian descent. So I want you to really focus on how many meals a week do you eat meat? A lot of my patients say, I barely eat any meat. I really don't like it. And then when we sit down and we say, well, what did you have for breakfast? And it turns out that they had sausage in their egg sandwich. And then at lunch, they had a sandwich with cold cuts in it. And then at dinner, they had meat. But they were only thinking about, oh, but Monday and Wednesday, I didn't have meat at dinner. But it snuck its way into its breakfast and dinner. So try to take real inventory of that. And then maybe just one meal this week. Replace it with a non-meat item such as tofu or tempeh or fish or beans. You could even try just meatless Mondays. If you're a big meat eater, just maybe go with meatless Mondays. And then start, instead of centering your meal around the protein, like, oh, I bought a piece of steak, I mean, what else, that's going to be the big thing on my plate. I would actually go to the supermarket and find, well, what's the beautiful fresh vegetable that's calling your attention, and what kind of beautiful stir fry? How are you going to flavor that stir fry? And then if you really need it, well, what else am I going to add? I'll eat tofu today. Are you craving a sweet? Well, try a piece of fruit first. Make sure that fruit is really accessible in a bowl. And then try a new whole grain. So if you're a big white rice eater, as I am, shift to brown rice, add some quinoa in there, switch your white bread to whole wheat bread. You can eat oatmeal for dessert. And then as a strategy for shifting, don't just shift all the way from white rice to brown rice. That's a big taste difference. It's also a big texture difference, as I have learned in my own family. And so in fact, I actually started with 3/4 white rice, 1/4 brown rice, soak it for a bit of extra time. And then I've actually slowly transitioned my whole family's diet to more brown rice than white rice, and we prefer it. Okay, so I'm going to finish with some general guiding principles, although really Wendy's described this really very, very well. Inform yourself with your personal needs. So I would really recommend going to an online calculator to calculate your daily calorie and protein needs. And so you can actually get prescriptions. These are really targeted for patients with cirrhosis, but they work well for patients with chronic liver disease without cirrhosis. And then just for a short period of time, quantify your intake. It is really helpful to know what your actual intake is versus what your perceived intake is. You don't need to be on an online calculator for the rest of your life. I'm asking you do this for maybe 1 to 2 weeks, just so you know, and just so you have a realization of, oh, I thought I wasn't eating meat, but I actually am eating meat. Oh, I thought this was 1 serving, but it's actually 3. And then, of course, exercise is absolutely critical. As Wendy mentioned, it's the 30 days, 5 days, 30 minutes at a session, 5 days a week is the best prescription. But that's the best way to integrate all of this great nutrition as a therapeutic into your muscles. And then, of course, give yourself grace. 1 change at a time. Aim for healthier, not healthy, just healthier, just better than before. And celebrate your successes. Don't give yourself a hard time. If today you had extra portion or you had a dessert instead of fruit, it's okay. Tomorrow's another day. You can try again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Lai and Wendy. We have like 2.5 minutes, so we're gonna make this quick. Real quick, at the end of this webinar, when it ends, our attendees are gonna be given a survey that'll pop up on their screen with 5 quick questions. Please go and answer that. It helps us create better webinars like this in the future. Additionally, I wanna say that my colleague Shreya and I were doing a quick text during your presentation, Dr. Lai, and thought, like, maybe before the holidays in December would be a great time to have a webinar about nutrition around advanced cirrhosis and other things like NASH and NAFLD. So we might just be reaching out and sorting out something else. But 2 quick questions. One, is there any, this is from Richard Smith, is there any work being done around dietary recommendations with a cultural focus, especially specific to Asian food, given the higher rates of Asian African communities that have Hep B? His mother, who is post-liver transplant, during their literature kind of review, found it to be mostly Western diets.
It's a great question. It's actually been my dream to develop culturally kind of the Mediterranean style diet cookbook or recommendations, but for Asian diets or sort of other diets. There are lots of patients that we've got Latinx populations, we've got African populations, we've got Asian populations. To my knowledge, there's not any active work in it. I would love to be spearheading that work, and if there's anyone who I'd love to maybe even pair up with the with any organizations out there, any coalitions to be focused on this. I think one of the biggest limitations is funding to really do this kind of work, but this is where patient advocacy and coalitions can really help provide some of that stimulus.
I got a note. Thank you for that. I got a note saying, wish we had some more time for Q&A. Totally agree, but also really appreciate the time we had today was spent how it was. Another just quick question while we have a few seconds. Hey, black coffee saves your liver. That's great to hear. But at some point, you hit the level that it's like bad for blood pressure. So do you have like a recommendation, a range where it's like healthy but not heart racing and bad?
Actually, the data around coffee and heart disease, it's probably is not that strongly associated. The one place where coffee might truly be bad is sleep and anxiety. So certainly coffee, there are some cases in which coffee may lead to heart arrhythmias, but in fact, there are pretty good data recently that actually came out of ECSF that it's not associated with most heart arrhythmias, and so most patients are going to be fine. And then it's just if you have problems sleeping, then I would recommend drinking your coffee earlier in the day. I, for one, can't drink coffee after 12 noon. But this is a really personalized recommendation. And if you do have a heart condition, I would definitely work with your primary care physician. In general, 3 cups of black coffee a day is probably going to be okay.
Nice, that's how much I do. Wendy, any last words you'd like to end us out with?
No, I just think this is a great session and lots of very useful information from Dr. Lai, and thank you for people's participation here. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all so much. We'll be, for those of you who attended, we will be sending around a link to this recording. And like again, just please fill out the survey and keep your eye out for future webinars. Have a great rest of your day.